yeah, thanks, Kate, for pushing the recording button. Yeah, welcome back to all of you 2026 listeners, viewers. It's been a while since we had the last community call. It was in December, and it's even a little bit longer that we had the last pool party. So we decided to have a double fun, double pleasure today, because we wanted to integrate pool party into the community call, to give the pool party a little bit more audience, a bigger audience, because we have important guests here, and yeah, this is one of the reasons. The other reason, we had recently in the forum a little bit of a restructuring of the real world assets category, and the pool party is a part of the real world assets. And what we did with the pool party, we want to give active pools, which already launched a pool in TinLake, the chance to talk about their business, to talk about their vision for Centrifuge in the next years. And of course, we wanted to integrate it into the community, because the community is important. And why it is important, we want active pools issuers to be more connected with the community, and of course the relationships, the partnerships are important. Yeah, so please, if you have any questions, ask the questions. That's now your chance, your opportunity. You can raise your hands, you can write in the chat. If you don't want to ask your question, then I can read them out, no problem. Yeah, that's it from the pool party. But it's not only a pool party for active pools. Everyone, for example, who wants to launch a business in the future, it's optional. It can be a pool party, and yeah, it can be in the process of the POP, the pool onboarding proposal. Yeah, that's it from the beginning, from my perspective. Maybe yeah, I mentioned BlockTower maybe already. It's the biggest issue so far, if I'm not mistaken. They are active. They intend, you guys intend to launch 4 pools in total on TinLake. That's big. And everyone who had a look into TinLake, into the TVL, yeah, something happened since the beginning of the year, and that's why we want to talk about it. You guys are the reason for that, and yeah, that's why you are here. Thanks to everyone who's here. Yeah, I guess that's it from my perspective. Colin, yeah, of course, it's going to be fun. Yeah, I pass over to you, Colin, if you want to say a little bit more about our guests today.
Sure. Thanks, Christian. That was great. And thanks for all the context around the real world asset category and pool parties and community calls and all of that. So I won't spend too long here. I think the BlockTower team does a much better job of talking about what they do, far better than I can. I think I'll provide some context, which is that the work with BlockTower has been, it's been a long journey to this moment. And I think maybe the journey that we go on from here is even more exciting. But for me, the BlockTower team really represents, at least, you know, I don't want to speak for all of the real world asset movement in crypto, but at least for us here at Centrifuge and within our community, kind of like a pinnacle moment in a lot of ways, right? Where you have a leading crypto hedge fund take the time, the effort, and see the opportunity to build a credit team, and then get a credit fund off the ground through DeFi and on Centrifuge. The work they've done with MakerDAO and the effort that went into that is incredible, and they'll talk about that today. But I really think BlockTower for me represents one of the most forward-thinking organizations that's out there. And as I get deeper into both the traditional finance networks and private credit markets, and also understand more deeply, you know, where crypto sits today, a true leader in this space. And I think we're incredibly lucky at Centrifuge to be working with them, and for the time and energy, and it's been a very mutually beneficial relationship. So I'm excited to see them talk about and get into the details today. They've got a presentation there they'll they'll take us through. And I think let's keep the chat lively, and don't be scared to ask questions and jump in with comments. And so, Kevin, I'll let you kind of lead from here and over to the BlockTower Credit team.
For sure. Yeah, I'll start the presentation and we'll just echo what Colin has mentioned. At any point during the presentation, if there's any questions or any points that you'd like us to dive deeper on, go ahead and I would say best approach, maybe raise the hand in Zoom. And I don't know if Christian or Colin, if you can flag as appropriate if you see questions come up that I might not have caught. Appreciate that. So with that being said, I'll share the presentation and I'll actually turn it over to Jack to kick us off at the start of this.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the time, everyone. And I'd love to take a minute to introduce BlockTower and myself here. So can we go to the first slide here real quick? Yeah, before I do, I just want to give the disclaimer here. So BlockTower is a registered investment advisor, but this presentation and the opinions expressed are not financial advice. And you can read the disclaimer. I imagine Kevin will post this somewhere, so it'll be available. Great. So just to give a quick overview on BlockTower for those who don't know as well. So we are a registered investment advisor, and we are also a family of funds. So there's 4 key strategies at BlockTower. There is a flagship fund, more of your classic crypto fund, a market neutral strategy, a venture strategy, and then there's us. And in many ways, we're kind of the black sheep of the firm in the sense that we're not actually investing in crypto. I'm sure everyone here is somewhat aware of the landscape we play in, but as a participant in the RWA space, we're a credit investor. So we have an attractive line that we negotiated with MakerDAO, and that is our senior financing piece, and it represents the drop token on Centrifuge and on our transactions. And then we are the bottom piece of the capital structure. So all the underlying assets that we have invested in to date and will are all in the credit domain. Cool. Want to just go to the next one here, Kev? Yeah, so let me just take a minute here to talk about what these assets are. So at the highest level, I want to talk about what our facility allows us to do. We can invest across 3 kind of key different landscapes here. The first one is traditional structured credit, and I'll come back to that one in a second because it requires the most unpacking, I would say. The second is whole loans, and this is much more this is much more familiar to what's on Centrifuge already, and kind of just generic structured credit strategies. So this is the process of us as kind of a purchaser or an originator if we were to be an originator who also retains loans, but that's not our strategy here. So we would go out to the open market, we go and purchase whole loans from an originator directly or in the secondary market, and then we look to securitize those loans either off-chain or in this case on-chain. So what this looks like is really just a classic structured products vehicle, right? You're buying the loans, you're sourcing the leverage, and then you are retaining the bottom junior piece. So very classical strategy there. And the third strategy is senior debt facilities. So what this strategy looks like is effectively us lending off balance sheet to fintech originators or really just non-bank lenders who are looking for some form of capital to fund their business. And typically these borrowers are not big enough to access a bank line. So you're dealing with a pool of assets or receivables or loans that need financing and kind of square peg round hole, don't have a clear financing counterparty in the rest of the ecosystem. So this is a popular hedge fund strategy and one that we're really active looking at. But both the whole loan strategy and the senior secured strategy, senior debt facility strategy are not ones we're actually executing on today. So to date, all of our purchases and then all the corresponding TVL that you'll see in the Centrifuge platform comes to the hand of us buying in the primary and secondary market ABS structures. So what we're doing is we're purchasing investment grade, so high up in the capital structure, typically either at the very top or somewhere in the middle, slices of ABS deals. Now, the underlying collateral in these deals could be a host of different things. So to date, we've bought solar deals. So that's residential solar loans, the financing of panels that go on people's roofs, unsecured consumer loans, so things like lending club loans. We've looked heavily in the auto space, so just traditional auto loans, credit card loans, and kind of go on from there, right? So we're buying effectively a piece that is over collateralized by other loans below you, and then we are re-securitizing that onto the Centrifuge platform. So for us, it's a really attractive trade right now. Typically, we're sourcing deals that yield somewhere between 7 and 9%. And more importantly, this is a really risk remote part of the capital structure. So we're investing in a piece of the investable ABS universe that we think has real downside protection. And that's important to us right now. Now, what you might see over time is we might move across these strategies as the broader macro environment kind of dictates us. So to some extent, we're trying to be responsive to market dynamics. And right now, structured credit is the best opportunity for us. But down the road, we plan to do whole loan deals and senior secured debt facility deals as well. But again, just in response to kind of market dynamics there. So I'll turn it over to Kev at this point, and happy to circle back on any of these points a little later on. Oh,
Jack,
Colin.
just one quick question.
Yeah.
If you can share in a public forum for your work here across these three, do you think about kind of like a percentage of what that makes up of the fund on each of these three, or does that change depending on market conditions, or is there some kind of set way that you think about how much you allocate to each one of these three kind of verticals, if you will?
Yeah, great question. So I would, I take one step back here and really say that these three different categories here, if it wasn't clear in my past little ramble there, they're not actually representative of different asset classes. And what I mean by that is I would define an asset class as kind of what your end exposure is. So that's to auto loans or to consumer unsecured loans or to credit cards, right? These are more structures. And to some extent, they dip into different parts of the market. And what I mean by that is structured credit typically sits on the public side of the market, in the sense that you're trading QSIPs, and it's a really readily available market with a lot of pricing transparency. Whereas when you dip towards whole loans, you get a little bit more in the private side, and you dip towards senior debt facilities, you're further in the private side. So what I mean by that, and this might be a long-winded way of getting to the point, but no, we're not really cognizant of a ratio of the fund being in each particular subset here. What we are cognizant of is the type of underlying exposures we have. So the way I look at it is you always want to be balanced in terms of the underlying exposures that you have. So you don't want to be too heavy and just say exclusively auto or exclusively consumer unsecured. But on the structuring side, that's the piece of it that we're a little more reactive to the market dynamic. So right now, the market is telling us I need to be in structured credit. This is where the opportunity is right now. So right now, it makes sense to be almost 100% in that direction. But over time, as the opportunity set changes, the other structures might make more sense. Does that answer your question, Colin?
Phenomenal. Thank you.
I think I might just checking to make sure that there's any other questions to address before moving to the next section. I think we're okay. All right, great. Thanks, Jack. And just passing it on over. I know a key question in the community is, how is BlockTower using Centrifuge, and more importantly, why? So we wanted to address that question head on, and I'll start with addressing the how in two parts. How are we using Centrifuge today, and how we intend to use Centrifuge, and how we intend to continue to scale and build the product and platform going into the future. Today, Centrifuge is a key conduit for us to communicate to the broader DeFi ecosystem, right? It's a key bridge that enables us to bring over 60 million in assets that traditionally exist on these TradFi rails to be financed by counterparties like Maker and others. And that's a key advantage here, because first, we're translating a lot of the settlement assurance, verification work, asset transparency that would normally be handled by multiple counterparties that would need to be trusted actors, verified parties, agents that don't necessarily exist in the DeFi ecosystem today. Centrifuge helps us handle all of that, and it's an amazing product that allows us to communicate again with the broader DeFi ecosystem. And how we intend to use Centrifuge in the future is very much on the same lines, but continuing to graft or bring the securitization structure natively onto Centrifuge, so that there's less parallel systems that have to be run there's more efficiencies and better use cases that we can leverage, moving assets to be issued almost natively on chain. And that's very much the target. That's very much the mindset that we want to build towards, which is why we're very active investors in this space. And that kind of brings me to why we're using Centrifuge. For us, we talk a lot about how we place bets on products that are building standards or creating what we call a narrow waist. And that's very much how we view Centrifuge. It's really starting to build that narrow waist that will ultimately be the efficiency layer that connects borrowers to lenders. And we're very much on that journey, and that's why we are so bullish on seeing Centrifuge grow. And we're very excited to continue to partner with the community and the team in seeing that vision through. I'll pause there and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, there's one question actually from JG. I can ask it if you want to, JG. How do economics flow to CFG token from pools such as BlockTower?
Hey, Christian, I think I can jump in there actually with a broad answer in the chat, as I don't think that's specific to BlockTower. It's more of a protocol-wide discussion, but I can answer.
All right, thanks, Colin.
Yep. Okay. So moving on, and please stop me again if there's any questions. Also wanted to note, obviously BlockTower as this disclaimer noted in the bottom, BlockTower and the overall firm, we're also investors both in Centrifuge and the Centrifuge token. So quick disclaimer on that. But besides, but adding on to how and why we are partnering with Centrifuge, just reiterating that there is a huge opportunity in front of us in terms of disrupting the securitization market today. As we see it today, a big part of that is standardization and building that narrow waist. But a lot of other parts are bringing what we view as best practices and all the experience and capital that has been accumulated in the traditional financial markets to these on-chain primitives, right? So we're trying to do that today, and we hope to be doing that through our current engagement and pools that we've launched by bringing not only institutional capital, but that underwriting experience, as well as access to these markets that are traditionally fairly difficult or more or less closed off. We also spend a ton of time working with the team on just being thought leaders and helping to shape the product, both from what we can do today, but also where we can go in bringing more institutional capital, as well as asset originators on board online as quickly as possible. And obviously, as BlockTower, as the firm, we take pride in having a broad extension across the crypto and DeFi landscape, and we very much view that as a core tenet of how we operate here, bringing those primitives, mindsets, players to the community through our various franchises as well, so that we can grow as an industry together. And that hopefully creates this kind of flywheel effect of enabling this platform to what we view and expect it to be, which is really tackling this really gargantuan problem, but in a very unique and I would say a decentralized manner. And I'll pause there again for any quick questions.
Ivan, I guess question first has been answered. We want to ask the second question.
So
yes.
it's the...
Yeah, so my question is, now we are in bear market, so I would like to know why BlockTower invested just now in Centrifuge, and why BlockTower did not invest it before.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say we would have loved to invest it before. It was just a lot of time and energy spent in actually structuring the deal, both securing the financing from the Maker side, I don't know if you followed along our journey there on the Maker forums. We've done a lot of prep work in building up to this investment that you see today, and we honestly expected it to have gone faster, but due to both relationship building, deal structuring, as well as setting up the entire legal structure with Ankura as the trust indenture and et cetera, it just took time. So I think we started in the bull market and then the deal landed in the bear market. But I would say that we were firing at all cylinders. This is a large problem that needs to be tackled diligently. So hopefully the cycle shortens for future pools. We hope to have set a standard both from a legal perspective and kind of just work product perspective. So hopefully that cycle shortens, but we would definitely like to go faster if that's possible.
Yeah, I would just echo that point for sure. The process really was pretty onerous on the legal side. And a lot of that was that we weren't really just going through the motions with small iterations. We were actually laying the path for how this is supposed to work. So also would repeat that Kevin's point that in the future, we do hope it moves quicker. I think we've kind of set our own tracks. So for us, it should be an easier process in the future. But over time, you hope that these documents and the legal pipes become a lot more boilerplate. And at that point, you end up with a much less costly, much more efficient kind of process, start to finish on the legal side.
Yep. Any other questions? I don't know, Colin, Christian, if there's other covenants that restrict buying equity and structured products. Maybe Jack, if you want to speak to the covenants that our facility,
Yeah, sure. So there absolutely are. I mentioned earlier that we're only investing in investment grade tranches, and that is actually a covenant in the deal. So we can only invest in investment grade tranches rather. In addition to that, we're sort of barred from certain sectors for a number of different reasons. Generally, I would say our restrictions are around having enough interest in the vehicle to service the maker line comfortably. So if we're trying to buy an asset with a very low interest rate, we need to offset that interest rate with another bond that has a very high interest rate. So that's one thing we manage around. The other is definitely rating. And then the third is the weighted average life of the assets. So we have a restriction. We can't have 50% of the pool, basically only 50% of the pool rather can be longer than 48 months. And the remainder needs to be within 6 years. So ultimately we're organizing our pool in a way that the entirety of the pool ends up being a little bit shorter duration on the broader spectrum of what's out there. It's all high quality credit with deep subordination, and it all has the interest rate necessary to service the maker line and leave a healthy return for our investors.
And just speaking to some of the progress that I would say, to echo Jack's point, the groundwork that we've laid in getting to this point, and hopefully helping future pools and originators in their process. This is just a quick example of some of the thought leadership work, that engagement with the Maker community, as well as just general alignment with the Centrifuge mission and ethos that we've collaborated on, throughout this process. So it was definitely a long and fruitful journey, but hopefully one that extends further. Can you speak to what the interest rate? Can you speak to what that interest rate is that is necessary to cover the maker line? If you refer to the 4% stability fee that is associated with our maker line, essentially, to what? Maybe Mark, if you want to clarify that.
If I can just jump in here, I didn't realize, and that's my fault, I didn't hear you all already mentioned the 4% to cover the maker. So that's all I was really looking for, just to get a better grasp of what the the range of interest rates you generally work off of for prospective deals?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
the only thing to add there is that our document mandates a pretty healthy surplus over the minimum. So the maker interest rate is 4%. We need to have 150% in excess of that generated. And that's a percentage of the size of the drop token, not of the entire pool. So definitely something we manage around. To be honest, it hasn't been too much of a problem. That hasn't really been a limiting factor for us in the current regime, but that could change over time.
Great. Honestly, yeah. So these are all good questions. Would want to nice. There's a POAP. So yeah, just wanna echo. You know, we're in this space because we are very much aligned with tackling the problem that Centrifuge is tackling, and you know, we hope to have laid a healthy groundwork. We intend to extend as much as possible the lessons, experiences, and opportunities that we've helped curate for these existing 4 pools to, you know, the community and future asset originators, etc. So please view us as a resource in that regard. Happy to you know, have deeper conversations or you know, speak with, you know, various community members on more specific questions, either now or in the future. And with that, you know, I kind of will take a pause. If there's any other questions, would love to field those. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Christian or Colin.
I got a question. I'll definitely jump in. Hope others will follow me. I'll put them in the chat for everyone. So these were 2 that I think came up on the forum post, BlockTower team. And I think you were talking about it a little bit, Kevin, earlier, how you think about institutional investors on one side and asset originators on the other, and how you bring these 2 on chain into your pool. I'm kind of curious, and those aren't my questions. Those are I think one is, but one's from someone else. Like, can you talk a little bit now that you've been using Centrifuge and you're a little bit deeper into the product and the funds up and running and all of those types of things, you're drawing capital from Maker, you know, either it's kind of this 2 sides of the same coin, which is what's missing from Centrifuge's experience right now that you all think is important for you all to scale. And then maybe that's kind of like, I guess, the dark side of the question. And maybe the bright side of the question is, now that you're inside of it, right, and using it, what's something that either was validated as you kind of went through the process with us, and now that you're using it, you know, it either delivered for you or something new occurred that actually made it even more exciting or even more usable for you as a fund? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, definitely. Those are great questions, and a lot. We spent a lot of time thinking about that ourselves as well. So first, you know, what is missing, right? One key aspect that I'd point towards is, you know, as, for example, you know, registered investment advisors, there are reporting and auditing requirements that are associated with most of the institutions that ideally would be coming online to Centrifuge in the future. And so that auditability and reporting is a huge aspect where both, you know, internally we've organized a system around, but also have reached out to kind of partners and other builders in the community that are willing and able to plug into the Centrifuge platform to enable those next generation reporting capabilities that, you know, enable institutions to comply with, you know, key reporting requirements in the future. So I would say that is one noticeable missing element that is quickly being addressed. And on the bright side, I think Jack and I would echo that the settlement assurance of the Centrifuge platform has been, you know, a key kind of shining light. And honestly, we talk about it a lot, you know, settlement and how we don't have to worry about being able to draw financing or be able to process the payments and execute the waterfall, trusting that the smart contracts operate the way they do and that they have. Right. So that settlement assurance is, in my personal opinion, an aspect of the product that is slightly undersold, honestly, because there's definitely a lot of settlement issues in traditional finance markets, and we don't even talk about that in the current centrifuge product. Like that's the base layer, that's the table stakes, and so both the settlement assurance and speed on the centrifuge platform is and as we expected, but I would highlight that as something that gives traditional financial markets a lot of pain and issues that doesn't necessarily exist here. I know, Jack, if you have additions.
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Nothing to add on my end here.
Great. All right. I see a question from Jake. What is the data relationship between BlockTower, MakerDAO, and Centrifuge? For example, do you plan on expanding the data provided in the monthly report, portfolio health report? Yeah, so one additional report that is actually structured into our deal is a quarterly report. So on a quarterly basis, as sort of the issuers, additional data beyond what we're providing in terms of the assets that we've settled on thus far is a bit more on the market side, because both Centrifuge, BlockTower, and Maker, we don't operate in an exact silo. So I would look forward to the quarterly report where hopefully there'll be additional color there. And additionally, I would say that we're still building out kind of the useful analytical tool set that that helps us extract additional insights and value from the data that's on Centrifuge and Tin Lake, et cetera. So as we explore that, as it makes sense, we'll be surfacing those to the community as well. Jack, I don't know, I think covered that.
Yeah, the same page. I think you covered it.
Cool.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, Matthew, you have another interesting question. Do you want to ask it to BlockTower, because it's a little bit long to read it? Matthew? Or I can.
Sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, hopefully the question made sense, but often I wonder, like, I'm a big fan of the Centrifuge project. I love what the team is doing. I mean, this is clearly, working on amazing stuff. And I can only really speak for myself, but I imagine there's others out there who are like me. We found Centrifuge in one way or another. We're supporting it in the best way that we can. We're advocating for it. We might retweet stuff that we see or whatnot. But I often wonder, what are other ways that I could provide value to the project if I'm not an asset originator, or if I'm not actually using the product itself, And I was wondering if BlockTower had any ideas on that, or any suggestions of what they'd love to see from the community.
Yeah. One obvious, and I would say also potentially understated aspect is the community aspect. Having a continuous dialogue with the community is fairly important to us, because it keeps us plugged into whether we know we're moving in the right direction, and whether from a broader ecosystem and platforms perspective that we're aligned with the mission and what we're working on. So I would say just as we've started to engage, and I think we intend to engage further on the Centrifuge community forum, keeping up a continuous dialogue there to ensure that the questions that we have a tight and iterative feedback loop, even if it's with non-issuers or originators or lenders, et cetera, because that feedback loop does help inform the way we think and ultimately the products that we hope to launch as well on the platform.
No, that helps. If I can reply real quick, I wonder if there might be room for regular conversation, even hosted events inside the Centrifuge Discord outside of these monthly community calls. I think that would be maybe valuable for all involved. Just a thought.
Yeah, maybe I'll turn that to some of the Centrifuge community facilitators. I would say, the additional dialogue is welcomed.
Cool. Thank you.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I can answer that. Yeah, of course, I personally believe that this is important, the conversation, the ongoing exchange, the contact between the issuers, the collators, and everyone else who is involved in the community, and of course the community as well, the core community. And if you guys want to have another pool party in the future, why not? This is the place. And we have community calls, regular community calls, and of course the governance call. So I don't have anything against it. So that's the decision of the community. I believe it's a great idea.
I see a question from Assad. How do you view the on-chain securitization market evolving? Anything in particular excited about coming to life or that will be game changing? Yeah. So one obvious aspect of this is actually already structured in our deal, but I would say we're a little early, is the aspect of bringing whole loans and receivables onto securitization platforms like Centrifuge, right? And one of the key aspects of that is, at the current scalability of the network, right, with Chainlink on Ethereum, it has proven a little bit difficult from a just pure transaction fees perspective, right? We had envisioned bringing a couple hundred, even like thousands of whole loans as a part of a pool, and it may be a little bit difficult with existing network transaction economics. However, that's quickly changing, right? With Centrifuge Chain promising lower fees and higher transaction costs, in addition to the privacy aspects that I know we've talked in prior discussions on. That's very exciting because, again, we are slowly chipping away at kind of the securitization market and structure with the technology and tools that we have available today. And it's really exciting, at least personally, and I think for the firm as well, that as we see the underlying infrastructure and technology evolve, these new use cases come online, such as bringing a group of whole loans to be securitized or structured on Centrifuge. That's definitely something I'm really excited about. Jack, I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, I think one other thought, and I kind of was hinting at this earlier, is if you look at there's a lot that Centrifuge's structure can do, and I think there's room for down the road structures that are a little bit more bespoke, and what that does is ultimately opens up the framework to different types of asset classes, and then maybe even different types of investors who otherwise wouldn't normally get in. So I think in some respect, there's room for innovation on the structuring side, and I think Centrifuge is doing that, and I think it's a really interesting structure currently. But I think in some respective, the structures can be modified to be more familiar. So just like more optionality, more options in that realm, and then of course that requires the corresponding legal framework to develop and get more more standardized, which is something that, like I mentioned earlier, I think will happen. So I think there's a lot that those doors can open up in terms of new investors and things like that. And I think one thing we talk about that could be really exciting down the road is actually a rated deal, and that goes with the theme of bringing in new participants and getting to a place where you really have opened up Centrifuge and these efficiencies to traditional players, and that to me is a big step towards the end state here.
From Jeff. So why are there 4 different pools instead of 1? One of the considerations in constructing both the Maker credit line and the Centrifuge Pools was sort of avoiding cross collateralization. So that's one key aspect that enabled the design of 4 pools, and it also enables us to potentially tackle a more diverse, set of asset categories, right? So one pool covering primarily structured credit, while another pool potentially covering a different asset class within the credit space within the eligible criteria. So that's kind of why we have 4 kind of segmented pools there.
I'll just take it one step further there. I think that was a great answer, Kev. I just want to get into the nuance slightly for those that want to appreciate this piece here. So for senior facilities in particular, the way they work is, and honestly for whole loans to some extent as well, when you commit to purchasing a pool of receivables or a pool of whole loans, you're committing on a go-forward basis, not just one point in time, which is in opposition to purchasing QSIPs. So the public ABS securitizations have been purchasing to date. So on the ABS side, it's really easy for us to kind of manage the size of an opportunity set, because when you purchase a bond, it's never going to go up in size. It's really only going to go down. So all of our ABS positions are currently in SPV4. We have a really good grip on the size of the opportunity and exactly like what we have to deploy at any given time in that vault. So when you do the other two, the senior facility or the kind of whole loan trade, you basically need to think about where you need to be in terms of size 6 months down the road, because you're going to be funding or buying in kind of an ongoing way, as opposed to at one point in time. So when you deal with those originators, either the originator that you're funding through the senior facility or through a whole loan purchase agreement, they need to know that you have the funds available for them. So it's much better for us and makes us more competitive as a lender if we can say this pool is the sole purchaser of the loans or the sole funder of the senior facility on a go-forward basis, versus commingling those assets with a bunch of other investments that the originator has nothing to do with and doesn't want to get involved with or even think about. So yeah, just wanted to give an additional layer of context there for those who are interested.
Great questions. Thanks to everyone. Of course, thanks to you guys from BlockTower for answering the questions in detail. Is there one last question from Jeff, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Jack, the question is for those who want to invest. Yeah.
Well, I think the first thing to note here is that these pools are private. Unfortunately, this is the only parties in these agreements will be Maker in the drop position, and us, BlockTower, and our corresponding LPs in the junior position. So I think that's the first piece to mention there. And it's hard to give sort of a unilateral assessment on the risk of these pools. I mean, I think that the investment grade strategy that we are pursuing right now is very low risk. And I think we're in an environment that allows for that risk profile to still be really attractive. So I think if you look at the yields we're getting now, I mentioned that earlier, like I said, between 7 and 9%, you wind back the clock a year and a half, the same risk profile might command something like 2.5% to 3%, maybe 4% for some names too. But so we're in a really kind of different environment right now where you can get really, really good, attractive return profiles in this lower risk asset class. But I think, in certain scenarios, a year from now, we might see the yields that we're currently buying at compressing back to where they were a year ago. And so what that means is if you're kind of in our pool now, or you're one of the investors in our fund right now, you'd benefit from mark-to-market gains in those positions, but you wouldn't be able to redeploy into a new pool that has the same risk profile and the same reward because the whole market will have shifted. So it's hard to answer the question. It's hard to know exactly where we're going to be in the future, but I think in general, the strategy that we're pursuing right now, I would describe as being lower risk than directly adjacent whole loan strategies. So if we're talking about buying the whole loans that correspond to the securitizations that we're purchasing, when we purchase them in securitization form, we have more downside protection than we would in whole loan form. Now that said, again, the devil's in the details here. Really, what it comes down to is what type of loans are you buying versus what structures are you buying. So structurally, I think what we're doing right now is a really strong risk-adjusted return and a generally defensive strategy. But I think, yeah, it's just hard for me to answer that question without going deep into the details of the nuances here.
Thanks, guys, for answering the questions. Are there any more last questions? Because we will move to another topic in a few minutes. Actually, I have one question. Maybe it's the last one. I don't know. You guys talked about assets already. Which assets you have in your pools, and you know, of course, that Centrifuge is trying to tokenize everything from real world assets. What kind of, let's say, from TradFi, what kind of mega trends can you see which could be tokenized in the future? I don't know how many years, but someday in the future, like, I don't know, robotics or something else. But what kind of mega trends can you see? Or connected to this question, what kind of limitations do you see which cannot be brought on chain?
Megatrends. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know, Jack, if you have your opinion. My opinion here. So first, one trend is pretty obvious. It's, you know, there's a disconnect between the rates and yields, you know, provided by kind of general treasury markets, and we see a trend in, you know, more tokenized issuers enabling, you know, tokenized versions of kind of U.S. Treasury ETFs and et cetera, et cetera. That's one trend. I guess a broader mega trend. I don't know. That's a good question. I'd have to think more deeply about what would constitute a mega trend in that scenario. I don't know, Jack, if you have something.
Yeah. I mean, I think I might be maybe not as adventurous in answering this question, but you know, there's obviously a pretty wide scope there. But if I keep my scope just kind of in the debt and investing universe, which again, I know is a little less exciting when we're talking about like what the possibilities are here. But I think some of the low-hanging fruit in terms of the first sort of investments or debt instruments to be put on chain, you see it again and again, but real estate really is kind of the go-to example here. And I think it's just comes down to fractionalized ownership being particularly appealing in that sector. And then also just it's an asset that people are very familiar with broadly. And I think there's a huge kind of maybe disconnect is the right word here between what individual investors can do in that space and what institutions can do. So I think it's pretty ripe for basically adoption of this technology. I know there's a number of different examples as well, but that's the one that I kind of keep seeing come again and again, both on the residential and the commercial side. It just seems like there's a lot of people there's a lot of like entropy in that space for this technology, and I think there's going to be some success there in the coming years.
Thanks, guys. Really interesting answers, and yeah, hopefully we will see something in a few years on Centrifuge, of course, in collaboration with BlockTower. All right. Are there any more last questions to BlockTower? We have 10 more minutes.
I think we need to move now to the community notices part.
Yes.
So thanks, BlockTower. Thanks to everyone that presented. And thanks to everyone who asked a question. And last 9 minutes, we'll do community notices with a focus on founding documents. And I'll pass to Orhan.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, this probably belongs more in the governance call, but it's a very important topic that will
involve everyone in the DAO. So we wanted to create some awareness of it. And that is that last Friday, we posted a request for comment on our forum for the founding documents of the Centrifuge DAO. And this is something that has been in the works since November last year. So a lot of input has been taken and a lot of thought has gone into this proposal. So what is it and why now? So the founding documents, if passed through our governance, will be sort of like a constitution of the Centrifuge DAO. And since we are at a very early stage in our DAO, it's important that we agree on the direction we want to go and how we want to get there at a very early stage, so we are aligned with the mission and how to get there. So we have proposed that the founding documents consist of 4 parts. I'll keep this very short and high level to make sure that we can get some input on it here. And the 4 documents are a shared mission, which is what we want to achieve, where we want to go, and our principles, which is basically how we act and how we think and how we approach our tasks in the DAO. And then there is levels of engagement, which is basically we are all different. We have different ambitions. We have different interests in the project. So we have tried to define the different types of contributors in the DAO and what their privileges should be. And lastly, there is a code of conduct, which goes without saying are the rules that we would have to abide by if passed. And it also includes a conflict resolution process. So we know how to deal with conflicts if or when, probably most likely when they arise in the DAO. It's inevitable, but so we have some mechanisms in place to deal with those things. So that's basically what the founding documents is about. And along with our governance process, it is intended to be one of the key pillars of the DAO. So to make sure everything stands. So my question to you guys who are here, and I'm particularly interested in hearing from some of you who are part or used to be part of other DAOs, whether this is a good idea, whether it is a strong pillar, or if it's a bulldozer that will bring the house down. What are your thoughts? Go ahead, Ryan.
Orhan, yeah, hey, I just want to say thank you so much. I read through all of them this morning, and I really just want to give everybody in here who's involved with Centrifuge a lot of props. As someone, I appear on AAG on the Kusumarian for the Polkadot bigger kind of broader ecosystem governance every week. I'm really into governance, and what you guys are doing with Centrifuge is amazing. Like I mean this with all sincerity. I do not, as the director of protocol relations for Lucky Friday, I talk to a lot of parachain teams. No one is doing this level of on-chain governance the way that you guys are. I'm also involved with like a social group that's well known in the ecosystem, Chaos DAO, and we've been struggling through a lot of the same growing pains in terms of just codifying a lot of these things. What do we want to achieve? How do we move forward? You know, the code of conduct. And I read through everything this morning, and I just wanted to give you a shout out. Dior obviously was a primary writer. Kate, I know you were one of the people who helped. Lucas, there are other people who were involved in putting together this document. It was clear that a lot of time, effort, and thought was put into these documents. And if you haven't had an opportunity to read them, I just wanted to encourage everybody who's either here today or watching the recording after the fact, please read through these documents. I think they're very well written, very clear, concise, and just top-notch job. And I wanted to just hop on the mic to say that. So thank you so much for all the work that you guys are doing.
I appreciate the kind words, Ryan. And indeed, a lot of thought has gone into it, and a lot of people contributed. So a shout out to everyone involved. And it's just important to notice that nothing is written in stones yet. This is still at a request for comment stage. So people are allowed to provide input. People not only allowed, they're encouraged to provide some input on whether this can be improved or they agree with it. But it's just important that we already now agree on it. So basically speak now or forever hold your peace, because these are going to be how we act and think and behave in the DAO going forward. So
I don't know if it's how we think necessarily. I still think that there's room for lateral thinking, all types of different thought within the DAO. But I understand your point, Orhan. It's like the guide, like the tracks that keep us going in the same direction.
So anyone else, you mentioned Chaos DAO, Ryan. Are any of you other guys like familiar with other DAOs and whether you think that this is the way forward? Is it a good idea to do these things, or is it
yes, absolutely. I mean, I completely concur. But I will say this, it's messy. It's messy work, right? Like you've already figured this out. You guys have been working on these documents since November. We've had a huge start-stop process with trying to codify everything for us in Chaos DAO. We're doing it in a Git book, but it's something that, and to kind of go along with what Kate was just saying with regard to the lateral thinking, because it is a DAO and there is no centralized sort of leadership, you do get a lot of variance in opinions. And the real trick is trying to capture that through governance votes. So like what we're doing, for instance, within Chaos DAO is we have a pure proxy, for instance, like voting on bigger referenda that are happening on Polkadot or Kusama and the OpenGov stuff. And so we have an internal governance process that allows our members to weigh in for how we want to collectively vote for the delegated KSM that we have in that wallet. So, and even just working out these original kind of structures and putting all this into place took us many months. So, don't be discouraged because you will come to pain points and other, there's going to be friction at times. But as long as, to use Kate's language, we're all running on the same track, people are going to be at different speeds. They might bump into us, but, it's a messy process. But I think in the end, it's always worthwhile because especially if it's really organic and a lot of people are contributing. Like I even think the way that you guys have differentiated the level of contribution is important. Because we see the same thing. We have roles in Chaos DAO where DAOists would be like the daily contributors. They're the people who are the, kind of always active, always doing something. And then you have the regulars who are sort of the ones that are the still part of that core contributor network, like the way that you guys have phrased it, but they're still valuable people. They're chiming in on stuff. And then we have friends who are sort of the passive participants. They might be there, but they don't chime in very often. So I think even just the structure that you guys have given it in the original document so far is really good. And I can't see it. Clearly a lot of thought went into this before you even published it and put it out there for the RFC. So, and just that, like I even today, when I was reading through the document, I turned around and immediately shared the link in our OpenGov channels in Chaos DAO. And I encouraged them to read it. I said, look at what Centrifuge is doing. No other parachain is doing anything like this. And so, again, just like big picture kudos for what you guys are trying to achieve. And it's going to be a messy process, trust me. But yeah, I'm very bullish on the whole idea of DAOs and moving into the future. And so I think the more of these that crop up and really put a lot of thought into what they're trying to achieve, especially with so many people on board, it's just like emergence, right? It's like the human brain. All these people contributing is going to give us something far greater than we could ever do as individuals. So that's, to me, I think the real benefit of being a part of a DAO.
Thank you, Ryan. Again, yes, it is going to be a bumpy ride. So but let's go on that ride together and navigate the best way possible. So if any of you have some additional input, please jump in the forum post, share your input, your ideas for improvements, and let's continue there. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for the short talk about the founding docs. Of course, Ryan, thanks for the feedback. Really awesome. Before this turns into a governance call, we should stop, I would say. By the way, in 2 weeks, exactly in 2 weeks, today in 2 weeks, on February 16th is the real governance call. Yeah, we could I guess we could continue maybe for half an hour more, but yeah, let's stop. And thanks for everyone. Thanks for BlockTower, of course, answering so many questions and giving so many insights into you guys and the pools you are trying to launch in the future. You're going to launch. Maybe a really quick one. Jeff, do you want to announce the winner for the monthly NFT giveaway, or should we do it next time? Because we should have one minute.
Yeah, I think a lot of people already do that. We already sent it in the message. So right now it's still going on, and you can have the comment. I can resend on the chat. So please do go and claim the POAP. We will now have the POAP. We have 50 NFTs, so we do get around 50 people. So yeah, that's it. Thanks everyone.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Then I guess we can stop. Kate, do you have anything more to add?